Hi, I'm Joshua Kemble, and this is my Vloggins. I am a full-time art director, and that's actually where I'm heading home from. Been doing that for about 7 years, art directing a creative team. I also have been a professional illustrator and graphic designer for about over 15 years. And this is the vlog where I talk about the process of my work on Two Stories Book 2, and actually mostly just my work on comics, but Two Stories Book 2 is the comic book that I'm working on now, which is the sequel to my debut graphic novel, Two Stories Book 1, which is hand-lettered, hand-inked, and handed to you in print, and it's a comic about faith and mental illness, and you can get it from Amazon at a really reduced price, or you can ask your local comic book shop to order it from Ingram. And I'm hoping to have some news about a second book that should be out this year, and I can't give too much information away, but I gotta say I'm pretty excited to share it. And I noticed a little preview of it pop up on the publisher's website. So I think probably by next vlog, worst case scenario, I'll be able to let you guys know by Friday. But I am really excited and eager to share the news with you guys, my audience and friends and followers and stuff. I love this channel, and I love trying to make you guys be like the first people in on when good stuff is happening. So I have a bunch of work to do. I have another potential publishing deal that I can't necessarily talk about until we close it, and then I don't know what their NDA kind of situation is with that. But I did, so that should be potentially closing by the end of the week, maybe by next week. And that means I'm in a scenario where I have to plug away and just crank on pages. So last night, I managed to ink 3 panels, which is better than the standard 1. Still want to up my game on it a bit and see how much I can get done tonight and ride that wave without riding to complete burnout. So that's my goal tonight. But I will say, it made me think of a really good topic for this video, which is kind of feast and famine. And I haven't talked about that in a long time, but in illustration, there's a long, old-time running phrase, and I think this probably goes outside of illustration. I first heard of the phrase, and I think this probably goes outside of illustration. I first heard of this concept when I started freelancing, and then I'd meet other freelancers, over 15 years ago. My goodness, almost 20 years ago now. It's getting crazy how old I'm getting. But anyhow, so the phrase is feast and famine. And the idea is when you're running a business, you're gonna have times of feast and famine. And when you're having a feast, you want to eat up and you want to store your food because you never know when the next famine's gonna be. And then in famine times, that's when you need to be harvesting, like working on any potential to have a future harvest. And so that's kind of the concept of feast and famine, but it's a good thing for creatives to kind of consider. If you're in a time of famine, I believe that's the time where you should be 100% developing personal projects, because when you're in feast, especially as a professional artist or whatever, when you're in feast time, you're not going to have a whole ton of time to put into your personal projects. And then when you're in feast, you're also not going to have a whole ton of time to think, because feast is like the time to harvest, to collect, to like get all your crops, like to get them in storage units, like to like work your butt off and get as much out of the feast as you can, because it may be a long season before you have the next. And so most of feast to me, like right now I'm in a feast season where I'm like, I have a really good day job that I'm very happy with, where I get to be creative, and it's different enough from my passion in art to where I'm able to sustain it and also sustain an output of personal work, which I like. I think that's a really good thing. It also enables me to do things like these weird comics that are like autobiographical or semi-autobiographical and deal with topics like theology and depression and like meaning and like these weird kind of slice of life books that are a hard thing to market and sell. And if I were just freelance again, it would be hard to find the time to focus on those projects, because everything's about selling and making your nut or whatever so that you can basically eat for the winter, right? So you need to basically constantly be hustling if you're running your own business. And the thing I like about having the day job is it provides a semblance of a routine of structured time for myself, and it allows me to do things like have vacation time and stuff like that, all of which can be done if you run your own business or you're freelance. But just for me, I find that this situation's nice. So that's part of the feast season, because again, that's not a guarantee of like that's always going to be the scenario in the future. Also, I'm in a feast season because I have too much work outside of my day job that is personal and fun and awesome stuff that I've tried really hard. I've spent years building, and momentum's happening with that. And so now I have too much to physically possibly do in the realm of like writing and illustrating my own comics. And that's insane and exciting, and it's a feast to me. And so like what that signifies is like it is time for me to double down and really just hit the pavement and like run, you know, because right now it's important for me to start thinking about the marathon ahead, because it's going to be a long marathon, and I gotta constantly be making movements forward, because if I don't, I'm not going to hit the finish line of the marathon. Does that make sense? Anyhow, so point being, like, my mindset switches from feast to famine. When I'm in famine, like, my number one priority concern is usually like sustenance throughout that season, so that, like, you know, being a father, it's like I gotta make sure my kid can eat, I gotta make sure my wife can eat, I gotta make sure we can keep a roof over our heads, and those become like very huge dynamics. Those are always dynamics, but in famine that becomes really important to kind of be able to sustain. And hopefully the stuff I do during the feast help during the famine. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's also encouraging when you've been at it for a while, because you'll go through all these different seasons. I think this is why, I don't know, there's like a beauty to aging, right? Because as I've gotten older, I've started realizing like things that were a big deal to me happen to me a lot now, that are not as big of a deal as they were the first time they happened. And also I have more encouragement going through things like that because I've been through things like that. So like when there's new hurdles or struggles or things that pop up, like a famine season, I know that I can take hope in the fact that there are feasts out there, that I've had famine before and that feast will return. And so I have to get in a mindset of like sort of being prepared to sort of accept each season as it's given. And I do think this ties a lot into Christianity too. Like as a Christian, you know, the idea of like every season there being seasons of life, seasons to have everything happen, basically, good and bad. And that through those seasons, the one thing that's consistent is God and like your relationship to God. So like for me, I find that really encouraging, because both have their struggles. Like when you're overloaded with too much good stuff, it's hard to see how, like for me right now, trying to visualize getting all these comics done, like in a reasonable time, it seems close to impossible. But that's been every graphic novel I've ever done, has always, and I think this is what it's like to be a writer too, like writing a novel. It always feels daunting and impossible. That's sort of the thing. That's this weird industry that I've chosen to be in, and a lot of you guys have too. Where it's just like, it's a lot of work, and it is sort of amazing that anyone completes a graphic novel or finishes it. So yeah, that's where I'm at, is like I am excited about good things happening. I'm really eager to be able to share with you guys, and I think that might be able to happen soon. If you haven't yet, make sure you're following me on like Facebook or Instagram, because I might I know I technically can't announce what it is, but I might end up like just kind of sharing what was on the publisher's site, because they put it up, so it's public at that point. So I mean, if I just kind of shared it, might not be a bad thing. Yeah. So that being said, I'm really eager and excited, and I probably am going to edit this so that you can see the process of me drawing 3 of the panels for page 1, just inking them. And then tonight I'm just going to hit the board and just ink as much as I possibly can, and ride it all the way to that line where I might possibly burn out, but I need to stay like right on that non-burnout side. And what's exciting to me is I've been doing this graphic novel thing for a while, and I finally feel like I'm at a point where I know there are people reading them. Not a ton, but I know I have readers, and I know that there's a publisher behind a lot of these things now, and that's very exciting. It's like knowing that it'll actually see the light of day it's a different kind of like commitment to sit down when you know, because like before it required a giant act of faith to just kind of work on this thing and dedicate years of my life to 2 stories, and to like not know whether people would buy it or read it, or whether it would even get out there, or whether there was a publisher who'd even take a risk on it. And now I'm like, every project I'm working on, I know has like a light at the end of the tunnel, like that's at least in theory, like that it'll get out there, God willing. And that's an incredibly encouraging thing when I'm hitting the board and working on my personal stuff. Like it feels like a huge relief, but also it's very motivating, because it's like, because I have this beautiful opportunity, a few really beautiful opportunities that I'm very fortunate to have, and are both a mix of like good fortune and a lot of hard work on my end, actually, that like years of work. Because of that, I know what an opportunity this is, and I don't want to squander that chance. I mean, I don't want to sound like, you know, that stupid Eminem song, the only get one shot thing, but there's some truth to that. Like, sometimes you are given great opportunities, and you need to take advantage of good opportunities when they come along in art, because as I said at the top of this, there is feast and there is famine, and you just generally are gonna have to get used to being cozy with both. So yeah, that's basically it, and I will see you guys on the next Vloggins or live stream. Right now, the primary interest for me is just to plug out pages and get through them as quickly as possible. So if I can do that, if I can live stream tonight when I'm working on comics and it doesn't slow down my process, then great. If it slows it down at all, I'll just listen to podcasts and stuff, film the little sped up videos so that you guys can actually see what I'm working on and stuff. But I will say thanks to everybody who's subscribed. If you haven't yet, hit the bell, you know, so you get notifications when I'm about to go live or when I have a new video up. And make sure you're subscribed, and let me know how you guys deal with feast and famine. I know it's a weird thing. It's a very basic idea, and maybe it's not as profound to you guys as it was when I first heard it. I know that when I was a young illustrator, though, the first time somebody even just mentioned, hey, there's seasons of feast and famine, I was like, pop, like this thing, like it really connected to me because it was so true of my experience as a young artist when I was first getting into doing this stuff professionally, because it is really like up and down. But anyhow, so that's my thoughts. I hope you guys are doing great, and I hope you're having success on your personal projects, and I will talk to you on the next Vloggins. Bye.